All right. Thanks for listening to the Limitless Learning Podcast, where we talk all things the future of learning. And today we've got John Muldoon, who's the founder of a really powerful tool called Interflexion, which has a lot of different use cases across corporate training, sales training, a bunch of different ways we're seeing this integrated. So really excited to get into this conversation. John, how are you doing this morning?
Doing good today, Dominic. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So why don't you take us back to the inception of this product and maybe the idea or the kind of inspiration behind how it got started.
Absolutely. It's an interesting start with what gave us the idea to build a tool like Interflexion. It really started with me. I was managing a software development firm in the South Bronx, and we were partnered with a not-for-profit. And the not-for-profit reached out to the community, brought mostly young people in, provided training for them in software testing and so forth. And we had some large accounts there, and we would hire some of these individuals now to bring them on board and being able to, execute on some of their training and serve our clients as well. And I call this the Bronx to Wall Street tale, in that we got started and it was working really nice. But over time, we noticed it was breaking down. And what the reason it was breaking down is while the young people had their technical training, they lacked the interpersonal skills to succeed in the workplace. And that was a light bulb for me. I said, oh my God, here's this great programming, helping underserved communities, bringing people into the corporate world. And there was a missing ingredient. It was the ability to improve your interpersonal skills, particularly in a corporate environment.
Brilliant. Yeah. What were some of the things you were noticing that these professionals were struggling with in their training?
There was a number of things, broadly speaking, the communication skills were lacking in a number of areas. Working collaboratively with team members was one area, because that's, with software development groups, you got to work as a team. So those communication breakdowns, you lose productivity. There's a tangible and intangible costs when that happens. So that was the key area there. Not exposed to kind of a corporate environment before, and no one giving them the training to come in fully prepared it became obvious to me. And then me and my partner pulled together and built performance management software solutions before. And we said, let's take a look at this and let's build something to help these people.
Yeah. Excellent. That you decided you might use these smart artificial intelligence tools to kind of augment this software training. How did that come about?
That's a really great question. My partner, John Hack, who's our CTO, Chief Product Officer and co-founder, him and I go way back. We built the first large-scale fintech platform. So John and I had a long working history. And John's background in particular is deeply rooted in AI. He got his start at Wang Laboratories in their R&D department in the natural language processing. So he is really one of the true experts in AI. And he's been following it for decades and watching its growth. And when I turned to him, I said, are we ready to use AI, and in particular, some of the large language models that were available to develop, an interactive training solution? Yes, we're ready now. And that's where we took our first step.
Excellent. And maybe you could walk us through a little bit. I was looking a little bit at these features that this product has and kind of the way that it takes us through an example conversation, right? With these, like say a managerial conversation or a sales conversation. And I thought it was so interesting how it lets you give a couple tries and then it'll give you maybe some more advanced suggestions for conversation. Maybe you can take us a little bit more through the process of how it works.
I want to take one step back a little bit, because what AI did was allow us to provide a solution at scale.
Yeah.
We're of the mindset everyone can improve their interpersonal and conversational skills in the workplace. And if you can provide a low cost, highly effective solution to do that in organizations, then everyone benefits. So that is, took us, got us started down the path there.
Excellent. Yeah. And
And then in terms of the conversation stuff, we built this first for first time managers. The data supports, they receive little to no training. They're uh, typically thrown into this situation and they have to manage their colleagues, sometimes their friends. They got to manage up, they got to manage client relationships. It's a
mhm,
totally different demand on their abilities. And if you don't give them the right skills to do that, well, the chances are they're not going to do well or they're going to fail. So
mhm,
we started focusing on managerial conversations, and part of this overlaps HR compliance. For managers that are giving performance reviews, if they give them the wrong way, could create legal liabilities. And if someone's not performing well and you don't address it properly, and if you had to put them on probation, you have to do that in a very special way. And that's where specific conversational training really comes in, because you need to build the muscle memory on how you address those situations when you're faced with.
absolutely. And oftentimes it's these managers that have a lot of expertise in so many different areas, but they don't have the opportunity to practice these kinds of conversations, right?
Well, yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, that was, we're going back to, conversational behavior change is deeply rooted in science. And the science is around practice, immediate feedback, and guidance. Practice again and this leads to improvements. So, we wanted to build a system that allowed you to do that, to practice like in a batting cage, where you could practice safely. There's a scripted conversation with the avatar that represents the particular situation you might face. And when you practice your response in that situation, the AI, this is analytical AI, this wasn't done through generative AI, gives you immediate feedback and then suggests a few ways to improve your response. You look at
Mhm.
that, you take some of those suggestions, you practice again, and then you practice to proficiency. Along the way, we think it was important in order to get to an expert response. If you want to see what a real expert response was, you needed to watch yourself. You needed to see what you looked and sounded like first. And then and in our solution, that unlocks the expert response for you to review, but you don't have to parrot it.
Yeah.
This software is designed around speaking in your own natural voice.
Yeah, so two things there. You don't have to, you're as long as you hit on the main points, the main concepts, you don't have to be parroting it. It's smart enough to see that. And then also you can't just get right to the expert response. You have to do some self, observe
Self
what's going
self
on. Yeah.
observation,
Yeah,
absolutely, yeah,
exactly.
and
Yeah.
and it's fun, right? People that are aspiring professionals, like anything to build a skill, it takes some commitment. The beauty of this, these are short burst lessons, like micro lessons, that enable you to practice in your own time, in your own voice, and in a safe place. And when you're comfortable and you start building the confidence of practice and recognizing, because the software measures your improvements, that you're seeing that your improvement visually and you could feel it, because your confidence is up, and you're going to be better prepared when you face those situations.
Absolutely. Now, I'm sure you've already touched on this a little bit, but I want to focus in a little bit on this idea that we're training interpersonal skills, but we're using a software tool. And so how did maybe we go about this so that it it still had that sensitivity to the interpersonal relationship, right? Like how did we um, go about designing that so that it,
Well, one of the beauties of and some of the obviously the expertise that we have, and in particular with John and his skills in building these enterprise solutions,
Mhm.
is that the feedback needs to be personalized, right? And that's what AI and the large language models give us the ability to do. We've trained our AI to provide that personalized feedback at scale. And that was one of the main things that we wanted to accomplish. And we were able to do that very effectively.
Excellent. Could you speak to any of the things you noticed as you were testing this product out and maybe some of the tweaks or improvements that you decided to make as you saw it play out in real time?
Absolutely. Part of it was when we piloted a few of the early test pilots. that when you, in the authoring tool, you need to script the scenario that you're trying to educate the learner with. What we found is when they wrote the scripts, many of them weren't really focused on what the ideal response is in that position, scenario.
Hmm.
So it was kind of a stumbling thing. It was more of us recognizing that it's important what the ideal response is, because the way our software works, you're configuring it to the ideal response. So the analysis is now looking at, here's the ideal response, here's your response, your steps away. It kind of grades you in a way. And that's what drives what it improved suggestions are for you to practice to get, you get to the ideal response.
Yeah. Yeah. I was, go ahead.
This is you're configuring the solutions, and that's the other advantage of that. This is built with guardrails. This isn't Gen AI going crazy. You have configured the response, and so this does not go off the rails. We built other mechanisms in the software that make sure you do.
Yeah, totally. So what I liked about this is it kind of breaks it down into several key elements of what the ideal response might be, right? Like here's a reframing aspect, here's a communicating value aspect, or here's a focus on it helps really, like, there's an ideal response, so to speak, but it helps the user really see what are the building blocks there, and then maybe let's practice each of those and how close did you get, and it's a really
Yeah.
powerful aspect.
Yes, and what our software we are very proud of. We really understands whether you've taken the right perspective on that dialogue. Because many
Yeah.
people interact and not talking, they don't have the right perspective on the situation. So that was a really important feature and that's where we're proud of some of the intelligence that we built into the system.
Yeah, that's a really subtle part of conversations for a lot of people, and probably something that a lot of people miss, or maybe that it takes that adding that extra layer really gives a lot of improvement. Can you give us an example of how that might play out?
Yes, if you're not taking the right perspective on a dialogue, if you're a manager and you're talking with an employee, the confusion it creates is where the breakdown in productivity occurs. Because
Yeah.
you need to be able to communicate effectively to people at work and truthfully, right? Because a lot of times, this was built to help managers and others have difficult conversations. Not everything is a sweet talk. Not everything is positive feedback. How do you give negative feedback,
Hmm.
right? So these are the skills that we help with. You touched on something earlier, but the way you structure conversation is important, right?
Yeah.
And that's what this helps you build. So it's almost an intangible discipline that you get by practicing on our system through multiple scenarios.
Yeah. And in these challenging conversations, it's probably the most important to be framing it properly, right? Having the right perspective to, not just completely miss the mark in the emotional intelligence aspect, right? And make sure you're speaking the same language with these people, right?
You have to be. And
Yeah.
look, this is used a lot in sales coaching.
Mhm.
And if you're missing the mark and you're missing the right perspective, you're not making the sale.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the reason a lot of salespeople like it, because this really helps them, because they're outcome focused. They're measured on tangible results. Did I make the sale or did I not? I'm
Right.
oversimplified to a certain degree. So having the right focus, having the right perspective, having the right structural framework on your
Hmm.
responses is
Yeah.
really key. Really key.
So you mentioned earlier guardrails. And what I'm understanding is it's very structured how this software gives feedback and how it directs the conversation and the process. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about how you designed how the software would implement guardrails so it's not just going off and giving
Sure,
completely.
I'll do my best. That's my partner's domain, because
Sure.
he's the guy. I call him the wizard. He's the guy behind the curtain there. But we were very concerned when we got started that and we were both well aware of the shortcomings of generative AI. in
Mhm.
particular, a little bit less now, but the hallucinations, generative AI doesn't work on a model. It works on a data gathering across a wide spectrum. We had to take that spectrum. We had to have the software had to have a model to work within. And that
Yeah.
framework we built, and we built it for analytical purposes. So one, you can't go off the rails. This software is going to tell you, no, 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 come back here. Just like a coach would do, and just keep you where you have to practice, where the drill is, and where the takeaway is ultimately.
Yeah, that's smart. And I think a lot of, especially educational tools, they're realizing it's important to kind of keep it in the box a little bit more than a lot of other like generative tools, which will just kind of go off in different directions. So it's good that
Yeah,
it's,
and there's a lot of value to the generative stuff. I'm not knocking it because we're using it in some other solutions now. But for this specific solution, this is was important that around the analytics, we were able to, and we were one of the very first to quantify soft skills, interpersonal skills. We thought if you can't measure it, then how do you know if you're improving? In particular, for an administrator, an HR executive, a sales manager, what can I see about the skill gaps of one of my team members, the team as a whole? It was very important to get that because that allows some of the knowledge-based training, and it tells you where to rescript certain scenarios to reinforce where the skill gaps are. So,
Mhm.
there's a science and there's a methodology to this. It's simple if you put your mind to it, and it's highly effective.
Definitely. Very cool. And so this started more in managerial training, correct?
That's correct.
And how did you expand it out? When did you see that this had its use cases on a wider scale and perhaps moving into the sales and other types of professional
Ab-
conversations?
Absolutely. Yeah, we knew where we started because, we wanted to help first-time managers. We just felt there's a big problem to solve there. As we went through, the last few years, we spoke with many people in the L&D world, and um, the but what we came to recognize is that some of them weren't prepared, for this kind of batting cage. It might sound simple, but writing highly effective scripts, you know, takes some thought process. It's not,
Yeah.
it's not a but it's not, it's not days, but it just requires a focus. And sometimes that focus wasn't there as strong as it needed to be. And we looked at the ecosystem and we said, boy, people in sales, they already do role play and they have scripts for those role plays. So now we can provide that batting cage really simple. They can load their stuff up really quickly and really have an analytical tool and a batting cage for their for their salespeople to improve.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's kind of low hanging fruit for us. The broader L&D training market has a lot of mandates. Um, but we have them using it as for managers as well. And then we got pulled into certain things that were a little bit outside our scope. But it was kind of interesting that it really kind of works in those situations. One area of types of conversations is having de-escalation conversations. That's
Hmm.
a pretty broad term, right? You could say managers need to have de-escalation skills, right? But we most recently were part of a project providing de-escalation training for conductors in one of our state rail systems here to have the improved conversations with passengers, and they face a lot of unruly circumstances. Some this can help with. Many, I think it can help with, but not all of them. Obviously, there's extreme cases, and if someone's there to cause harm or do things that this doesn't fit. But many conversations can improve. Many improved conversations can help the conductor and help the individual too.
Yeah. And what a great way to have like a safe environment, right? To practice these high stakes
Yes.
situations, right? Yeah,
Yes.
very good.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, when you've gone and implemented these in a business, What are some of the common improvements that you see among employees? Like could maybe something that you notice over and over.
Yeah. Well, if we look at the salespeople, it almost speaks for itself because
Right.
they're used to it. You know, think about a scenario, and I've seen this across many organizations. You do a offsite and the sales team goes and they're one group and some of the new people are there. And now all of a sudden you're put in this situation to say, okay, we're going to have you all role play and you're role playing maybe with your manager. And,
Hmm.
and maybe you're shy, you're nervous, you haven't had any practice and then you botched it, right? You didn't feel good about your performance, right? Because you're put on the spot without any preparation. This gives you the ability to build your confidence in really a short amount of time.
Hmm.
And when you have that, salespeople, you've got to have confidence, right? And, in those offsites, many times the type A people will take over the room, right? There's always
Hmm.
someone that wants to talk a lot and then the ones that are kind of new and don't want to misstep, don't want to create the wrong impression for their manager, their sales manager, and this allows you to be better prepared for that situation, but everyone on the sales team can benefit from it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it gives you the opportunity to practice these conversations in different environments. Like you said, people with different personality styles, they can nail something down on their own. They can have more comfortability, and it gives them, this better reflects their skill actually than just these certain contained environments, right?
And
Normally seen in training.
yes, and there's another part to this. It might sound a little quirky, but the AI gives you standardized response and individual coaching, which is highly effective but very costly. But that coach is going to respond differently to different people. It's just their methodology may be the same or very similar, but the humans by nature interact differently with different people that they deal with. The AI doesn't know the difference, right? And that brings a certain comfort to some of the people that practice with the software, that they're not exposed. They're getting standardized and really good to excellent feedback. And if they want to get better, it's right in front of them. Practice and you will improve.
Yeah. Well, with the clear success programs like this, what do you think in general are some changes we're going to see in this kind of training in the next few years?
I think it's happening quickly. I know, Doc, some companies, particularly large organizations,
Yeah.
don't always, they'll speak to it, but don't move quickly with the changes. But the AI has brought a revolution here, I think, in the learning space. And just about everyone uses it in some form as a tool. But I believe with that and some of the efficiencies that bring that redefining skills in the workplace is
Yeah.
what's happening. And it's happening quickly here. This isn't 10 years. This is the next 3, 2, 3, 4 years, maybe. We're seeing the companies that want to get ahead are using AI to reskill because you could do it quickly and at scale. And,
Mhm.
that's happening now. And the ability to provide AI coaches it's easy to deploy. It's always available. And if you know how to use it right, you and your organization are both going to benefit from the experiences.
Well, yeah, it's very important what you said there about reskilling because we're entering a new world where technology will take over different parts of business, right? And so it's really powerful to be able to focus on these human elements that will redefine the workplace, right? And to rapidly train people in those skills.
Yes, you brought up a term which I love. We refer to this as human centric software, right? That has an AI component. In the world where AI is perceived and probably really is taking or eliminating certain jobs, we're proud of the fact that we're able to provide a software that improves human skills in this reskilling type of environment. So the ability to change or adapt your skills is here with our solution and some others in the AI space. What we provide for that, we provide a pathway for that reskilling. In fact, we did some research here with some of the higher education universities, and we've had, we have 5 semesters that we've done in the business school down at UNC, and then used in their organizational ethics group. And this is the new demand for young people coming out of colleges and universities to have uh, some applied skills. For instance, it's used in the organizational ethics department, and the professor there will teach his lesson. He'll take a script a few scenarios that reinforce the lesson and allow that knowledge transfer. What you learned now, how would you apply that concept in a simulated work environment or interaction? We give them that ability. The students love it. They feel better. And then, of course, with practice, when you practice and you have an effective knowledge transfer and learning transfer, they retain it. And retention is key because most corporate training is not retained. So we think we're helping young people build the framework for being better skilled.
Yeah, and the retention part is a very, very key aspect of this. I'm glad you brought that up because there's a very specific way to train people to make sure that sticks. And oftentimes these tools are actually proving to be better at, you know, hacking into that process than perhaps a human coach might be, or at least more efficient on the broad scale, right?
Yeah, and you can practice as much as you want. If you get this, then you should be asking for more scenes and scenarios from your managers because
Yeah.
it works.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
And
the
so,
science, like I said earlier, is behind it. And once again, we really think there's just a huge need and importance around improved conversational performance. And you need to be able to effectuate behavior change in that framework to do that.
yeah, yeah. So it is a really rapidly changing environment in the next year. And I'm curious for Interflexion, what are some of the main uh, priorities for growth?
Well, we have our batting cage. That's been our mainstream. But I'll give you a little heads up. We are launching in the beginning of the new year. We have a highly effective personalized coach, and this I believe is another real game changer. Where Interflexion, as we've been talking about it, has has been a scripted, scenario-based interaction, and typically you would do that with an avatar that's set up on it. We built an AI coach and strategist that will be in the flow of work. So, for example, you might be going to a sales call, and you've done some of your practice maybe on Interflexion or Upload Classic. Now you can call up. We have a code name Scarlett. But Scarlett, I'm going to go making a presentation to Dominic. We're selling this kind of product to him. He's very cost conscious and so forth. We have 2 other competitors. Can you help me prepare for that meeting? And
Yeah,
Scarlett will
yeah.
take over. Will start prompting you, asking you more questions about it, who the stakeholders are,
Hmm.
what what is your measure of success? What do you want to get out of that meeting? And it'll start prepping you, and ultimately it'll ask you if you want to practice conversations to before you go into this. So literally, 10 minutes before a call, you could ask Scarlett, give her some details, and the response, we're just going into beta mode, but the response is I feel it's a game changer. This is really excited about what this does for people.
Yeah. Well, that's really smart because it's taking this more boxed in environment with the scripts and all that, and it's allowing it to be personalized and hyper specific to exactly the goals of that person right in that moment. And
In
that,
that moment, that meeting,
yeah,
that
yeah,
person you're
exactly.
dealing with, it's gonna know who you're presenting to, as long as it's gonna ask you all these details
Hmm.
about what you want. I've been using it myself now regularly, and probably one of the more critical people, and I'm really excited about how this is going to help a lot of people. This is truly, this is going to be your friend, your full-time, always ready coach in your pocket. And, we've designed it around sales and leadership. Once again, we're doing this in partnership with a leadership training, a prominent leadership training firm. And we've built the methodologies for effective leadership and effective sales into this program. So once again, this isn't a freewheeling, ask it anything. It's going to keep you to the mission at hand and prompt you to respond in the right way so it can give you, an effective strategy and give you the effective conversational skills and selling points that you need going into the conversations you're going to have.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah.
John, what a cool value add that would be. Yeah. So
you're going to be one of the first to see it. I have you on the beta list.
Absolutely. I'm excited to try that. It'll be really fun.
Yeah.
And inevitably, when we have these advancements, there's roadblocks or challenges. What do you anticipate being some of the challenges that Interflexion might see in its expansion, and especially if there's one that you could rapidly and easily take away, that you wish you could rapidly and easily take away? And so,
well, there's always resistance to change, right? Sometimes your biggest obstacle is the old way of doing things. We know they don't work. There's still some that have show skepticism about some AI solutions. Some companies have put the brakes, some have put the hold, some are moved cautiously, and some want to be the thought leaders and are willing to explore the different avenues. We've been fortunate that we've found some good companies that want to be the leaders in improved ways of doing that. But that's a challenge for us to go and find those thought leaders that are willing to take the ride with us. We think we've proved ourselves, but you have to prove yourself every day out there. So
yeah.
So that I think that's the big challenge here for companies thinking about what is their effective AI strategy as an organization. What is their tactically, how is it going to be deployed, and what do they need across their operating units? So we think something like Scarlett really can fit in across the organization, whether it's sales, leadership, managerial training, or even onboarding. Think about people, time and energy that's spent on onboarding. Scarlett can help you learn about the company, improve your conversations. So, you after the second day, when your friends or your parents or your aunt calls, oh, tell me about the job, or what do you do? What do they do? You can have you can speak articulately about what it is and the value proposition of their organization.
Yeah. Well, those are definitely in a world with so much rapid change and so much noise and skepticism, sometimes warranted skepticism. It's really important, like you said, to be able to communicate that value of what this really does, and also to cut through maybe some of that just automatic skepticism that people have, and really just get right to the point of what Scarlett can do. And
yeah.
And
organizations, have to really embrace conversational behavior change. If they really are steering their ship, and as we talked earlier, many companies are being impacted by this, and they're redefining their approach to the market with some new AI skills that they may have. But in the end, your people and the skills need to be at the top of the game, particularly with the changes that you're bringing in. Because if there are losses in terms of jobs and streamlining there, that means fewer people have to be better skilled, better problem solvers, and better communicators to succeed, and for the company to succeed as well.
Well, John, it seems like this has been quite a journey of seeing this from start to where it is now. And I'm curious if you can tell our listeners, maybe particularly people who are in this field, people who are experimenting or developing something, what might be your recommendation as they enter this wild and rapidly changing,
That's a good question. Look, it's I've been advised a lot of startups and early stage companies, and I start off by telling them this is not a guided tour. This is a journey.
Yeah.
And if you sign up, You have to be ready for anything that you think might hit you and be prepared for things that you haven't that are going to come at you. We got started and we entered the market right before COVID hit. We had a product built, and when the economy shuts down for 2.5 years and no one's buying anything, that was, that I couldn't have prepared. I couldn't have done anything to prepare for that, but just hang on, educate the
Mm,
market, build
mhm,
relationships, build your network. And we did that. And we spent good time with a lot of people, and we learned a lot about the market.
mm.
And so whatever you're building, know your market, know your buyers, and you got to keep pushing forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially like you said, spend that time building and relationships with and understanding the people that you're, seems like that probably sets you up for much more success.
Yes, and anyone that's delivered software and technology solutions in the market, it's a tough sell. Getting companies to change, and
Mhm.
if they have to change systems and ways they do things, those are hard for companies. It's disruptive, even though the end result is probably going to be a much improved organization, maybe financially, operationally. So, but for young entrepreneurs building good solutions out there, and there's a lot of them out there now. I mean, you have to stick by your guns and, but listen to the market. Don't think, you have the best thing since sliced bread when, you know, the market's singing and you're zagging.
Yeah.
Stay tuned to the market, stay tuned to your customers that you're serving.
Yeah. Well, that's great advice. John, thanks so much for taking us through all this and sharing your wisdom and the things you're excited about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, where can people and how can they support Interflexion? And if they're curious, learn more. And
Great. Well, thank you. And first of all, thank you for having me on the show. This
of
has
course,
been great. I love talking about this and where things are going in the learning and development world. But they can reach me at john.muldoon at interflexion.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. And those are probably the two best ways to reach out to me. And when anyone's interested in learning more about the software, what I can do for them and their organization, I welcome the opportunity to talk to me.
beautiful. Well, hopefully they'll check it out and they can have a conversation with Scarlett when it's ready. Yeah.
It's ready. It's coming soon.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, John. I appreciate your time and
Thank you so
everything you
much,
share.
Dominic. Have a great day. Thank you, again.